Hello, everyone. Welcome to English in Advance. I am your host, Jessica, and I am absolutely delighted to be sitting here with you today for what is going to be a very special and extensive session of learning. We are going to take a long journey together today, a journey that does not require a passport or a plane ticket, because we are going to be exploring the world right where you are sitting. Today we are dedicating this entire long episode to the art of describing your surroundings. Now, you might think that describing your surroundings is simple. You might think it is just pointing at a table and saying that is a table. But true fluency, the kind of English that makes you sound natural and confident and sophisticated, goes so much deeper than just labeling objects. It is about capturing the atmosphere. It is about describing the light, the texture, the sound, and the feeling of a place. It is about painting a picture with your words so that the person listening to you can close their eyes and feel like they are standing right next to you. So sit back, relax, and let's dive deep into the art of observation and description. I want you to imagine that we are sitting together in a comfortable space right now. Maybe it is a coffee shop or a quiet library or just a cozy corner of a house. The first thing we need to do when we want to describe our surroundings is to engage our senses, because language is not just about grammar, rules, and vocabulary lists. It is about connecting words to the physical world we experience. Let's start with what we see. Look around you right now, wherever you are. What is the first thing that catches your eye? Is it a bright light, a piece of furniture, or perhaps a person walking by? In English, we often start broad and then narrow down to the details. For example, if I were to describe the room I am in right now, I would not just say there is a chair and a table. That is a bit too simple for us today, since we are aiming for that B1 to B2 level where we want more color and life in our speech. Instead, I might say I am currently sitting in a spacious room filled with natural light pouring in from a large window to my left. Notice how I use the word spacious to describe the size and natural light to describe the atmosphere. These small additions make your English sound so much more natural and advanced. Let's talk about prepositions for a moment, because they are the glue that holds these descriptions together. When you are describing a room, you need to tell people where things are in relation to each other. It is not enough to just list items. You want to create a map in the listener's mind. For instance, I have a wooden desk in front of me. On the desk, there is a silver laptop, and next to the laptop sits a steaming cup of coffee. Notice the flow there. I use phrases like in front of me, on the desk, and next to. This helps you visualize exactly where everything is placed. Now let's try to practice this together mentally. I want you to pick one object in your current surrounding. Do you have it? Good. Now tell me where it is. Is it behind something? Is it under a shelf? Is it hanging on the wall? If you are looking at a picture frame, for example, you could say there's a beautiful painting hanging on the wall directly above the sofa. That word directly adds a nice touch of precision. But prepositions can be even more specific. Is the object resting against the wall? Is it perched on the edge of the table, meaning it looks like it might fall off? Is it tucked away in a corner, meaning it is hidden or hard to see? Using these dynamic prepositions adds a sense of weight and placement to your description. Let's move on to textures and materials, because describing what things are made of helps bring the picture to life. In my imaginary room here, there's a soft velvet armchair in the corner. By adding the words soft and velvet, I am telling you not just what the object is, but how it feels. This appeals to the sense of touch, even though we are just using words. Maybe you are sitting at a table. Is it a smooth glass table or a rough wooden table? If you are outside, are you standing on concrete pavement or soft green grass? Using adjectives like rough, smooth, shiny, dull, hard, or soft adds a layer of richness to your speaking that native speakers use all the time. But let's go deeper into patterns because objects are rarely just one solid color. Is the rug striped with long lines running parallel to the wall? Is the cushion checkered with squares of red and white like a picnic blanket? Is the wallpaper floral covered in pictures of flowers? Is the man's shirt plaid, which is a crisscross pattern often used in flannel shirts? Is the dress polka-dotted, meaning it has small circles all over it? Being able to describe the pattern adds another layer of visual detail to your speech. Let's expand our view a little bit and pretend we are looking out a window. Describing what is outside is a wonderful way to practice describing action and scenery simultaneously. Imagine I am looking out my window and I see a busy street. I could say the street below is bustling with activity. Cars are zooming past and people are walking briskly along the sidewalk. Here I am using the present continuous tense because the action is happening right now. Cars are zooming. People are walking. This tense is your best friend when describing surroundings because surroundings are rarely static. They are usually alive and moving. What about the weather? Because the weather is a huge part of your environment. If it is a sunny day, you might describe the sky as a brilliant, clear blue with no clouds in sight. If it is raining, you might say the sky is overcast and gray, and raindrops are tapping rhythmically against the window pane. Do you hear how poetic that sounds, tapping rhythmically? It is much more evocative than just saying, "It is raining." You want to try to capture the mood of the moment. Is your environment peaceful and serene, or is it chaotic and noisy? Let's take a moment to discuss extreme weather because sometimes the weather is more than just background noise. Imagine a thunderstorm. The sky turns an ominous shade of purple-gray. Ominous means threatening, like something bad is about to happen. The wind begins to howl around the corners of the building. Lightning jags across the sky, illuminating the room in a flash of harsh white light. Thunder rumbles deep in your chest, shaking the window panes. The rain is not just falling, it is hammering against the roof. Hammering implies force and violence. After the storm passes, the air smells fresh and clean, like wet pavement. This smell actually has a scientific name called petrichor, but you can just describe it as the smell of rain. Describing these dramatic changes in your surroundings allows you to use very strong dynamic verbs. Or perhaps consider a foggy morning. The world is shrouded in mist. Shrouded means covered or hidden like a cloth. The buildings in the distance are just vague outlines. Sounds are muffled, meaning they are not clear or loud because the thick air stops the sound waves. It feels mysterious and isolated, even in the middle of a city. Describing fog is a great way to practice words related to clarity and visibility. Now let's talk about sound, because describing what you hear is just as important as describing what you see. Close your eyes for a second, if it is safe to do so, and just listen. What do you hear? Maybe you hear the low hum of a refrigerator or the distant sound of traffic, or perhaps the chirping of birds. In English, we have great verbs for sounds. We can say the wind is whistling through the trees, or the floorboards are creaking under my feet. If you are in a cafe, you might hear the clatter of cups and saucers or the murmur of conversations around you. Adding these auditory details makes your listener feel like they are right there with you. But let's not forget the absence of sound. Silence. Silence is rarely absolute. We often talk about an uncomfortable silence which feels heavy and awkward. We talk about a peaceful silence, which feels relaxing. We talk about a stunned silence which happens after shocking news. We talk about a companionable silence, which is when you are with a friend and you don't need to speak to be happy. Describing the quality of the silence is just as important as describing the noise. Now, I want to shift our focus to a very specific and common scenario describing your home. This is a topic that comes up all the time in speaking exams and casual conversations. When you describe your home, try to take the listener on a journey. Imagine you are giving a tour. You might start at the entrance. You could say, when you walk through the front door, you enter a narrow hallway with a tall mirror on the right wall. This gives a sense of movement. You are guiding the person through the space. Then you might say, moving further in the hallway opens up into a cozy living room. Let's pause on the word cozy. This is a favorite word for English speakers, especially when talking about homes. Cozy implies warmth, comfort, and a small pleasant feeling. It is the opposite of cold or empty. If you want to describe a room that feels safe and welcoming, use the word cozy. But maybe your style is different. Maybe you like modern minimalism. In that case, you might describe your room as sleek, modern, and airy. Airy means there is a lot of space and light, and it feels fresh. Let's get back to the furniture. Remember how we talked about prepositions? Let's make it a bit more complex. Instead of just saying the sofa is near the wall, you could say the sofa is positioned against the back wall, flanked by 2 tall bookshelves. To be flanked by something means to have it on both sides. That is a fantastic B2 level phrase to use. The sofa is flanked by bookshelves. It sounds sophisticated and descriptive. Another aspect of describing surroundings is lighting. Lighting sets the mood. Is the light in your room harsh and bright, like in a supermarket, or is it soft and dim? You might say, I prefer soft, warm lighting in the evening, so I usually turn on the floor lamp in the corner rather than the main ceiling light. You can also talk about shadows. For example, as the sun sets, long shadows stretch across the floor. This adds a sense of time passing to your description. Now let's step outside again. Imagine you are in a park. Parks are great for practicing nature vocabulary. You are surrounded by greenery. You might see a winding path that leads through the trees. A winding path is one that curves and bends. It is not straight. You might see a bench situated under the shade of a large oak tree. Situated is a slightly more formal way of saying placed or located, and it sounds very professional. If you are describing a city scene, you need to talk about architecture. Are the buildings tall and towering skyscrapers made of glass and steel? Or are they charming old brick buildings with ivy growing on the walls? Let's delve into architectural styles for a moment. You might see a building that is brutalist. This refers to a style from the mid-20th century that uses a lot of concrete and blocky shapes. It can look heavy and serious. You might see a Victorian house which is ornate and decorative, often with steep roofs and bay windows. You might see a Gothic church with pointed arches and intricate stone carvings that look a bit spooky. You might see a contemporary building which is very modern, often using unusual shapes and lots of glass. Being able to identify these styles adds a layer of cultural knowledge to your descriptions. Let's try to integrate some feelings into our descriptions. How do your surroundings make you feel? This is the key to making your English sound human and relatable. You could say, "I love this room because it feels so tranquil and it helps me relax after a long day." Or you might say, "I find this street a bit overwhelming because it is so noisy and chaotic." Connecting your emotions to the physical space is a hallmark of advanced fluency. It shows you can express complex internal states in relation to the external world. I want to give you a little challenge to do later today. When you are doing a mundane task like washing dishes or waiting for the bus, I want you to narrate your surroundings in your head in English. Look at the soap bubbles. Are they iridescent? That means showing luminous colors that seem to change when seen from different angles. Look at the bus stop. Is it rusty? Is the paint peeling? Narrating your life is one of the best ways to practice without any pressure. No one can hear you, so you can make mistakes and correct yourself as you go. Let's go deeper into the idea of perspective. When you describe something, you are always describing it from a specific point of view. You can change that perspective. You can describe things from a bird's eye view, meaning looking down from above. For example, looking down from the balcony, the people look like tiny ants scurrying around. Or you can describe things from a worm's eye view, looking up from the ground. Looking up, the skyscrapers seem to touch the clouds. Playing with perspective keeps your descriptions interesting and dynamic. We should also talk about the concept of negative space. Sometimes what is not there is just as important as what is there. You might describe a room as uncluttered, meaning there are not too many things in it. You could say the walls are bare, meaning there are no pictures or decorations. This creates a sense of cleanliness and simplicity. On the other hand, a room could be cluttered or messy, which means it is full of things in a disorganized way. Let's practice describing a specific scene together. Imagine a kitchen. Let's build it piece by piece. First, the layout. It is an open-plan kitchen connected to the dining area. In the center, there is a large marble island. Marble is a type of stone often used for countertops. Hanging above the island are 3 industrial-style pendant lights. Against the wall, there are sleek white cabinets and a stainless steel refrigerator. Can you see it in your mind? By layering these details one by one, we construct a full image. Now let's add the sensory details to that kitchen. There is the aroma of freshly baked bread wafting through the air. Wafting is a beautiful verb for how smells move through the air gently. You can hear the hum of the dishwasher in the background. The countertop feels cool to the touch. The light reflecting off the shiny appliances makes the room feel bright and clean. Do you see how we are using all the tools we discussed? Sight, sound, smell, touch, and prepositions. But let's zoom into the pantry or the cupboards. What is inside? Is it organized with jars neatly labeled in rows? Or is it a jumble of packets and cans? A jumble implies a messy mix. You might smell the sharp scent of spices like cumin or cinnamon. You might see a bag of flour that is spilled, leaving a dusting of white powder on the shelf. These micro details make the description real. Another great topic is describing your workplace or study space. This is very relevant for many of you. You might say, "My desk is usually organized, but by the end of the week, it tends to get a bit messy." I have a stack of papers on the left corner and a jar full of pens on the right. My monitor is at eye level to help with my posture. Behind me, there is a whiteboard covered in notes and reminders. This kind of description is practical and useful for daily conversation. Let's not forget about colors. We often stick to basic colors like red, blue, and green, but English has a vast vocabulary for color nuances. Instead of blue, try using words like turquoise, navy, azure, baby blue, or indigo. Instead of red, try crimson, scarlet, maroon, or burgundy. Instead of yellow, try mustard, amber, or golden. Using these specific color names paints a much more vivid picture. For example, the cushion is not just blue, it is a deep navy blue that contrasts beautifully with the cream-colored sofa. The walls are not just white, they are eggshell or ivory, which implies a softer, warmer white. Comparison is another powerful tool when describing surroundings. You can compare your current environment to somewhere else. You might say this park reminds me of the one near my childhood home because of the large willow trees. Or you could say this room is much smaller than my old apartment, but it is much brighter. Comparisons help the listener understand the scale and quality of what you are describing by anchoring it to something familiar. Let's talk about the concept of atmosphere, or vibe. Sometimes you walk into a place and you get a certain feeling. A library has a studious and hushed atmosphere. A gym has an energetic and pumped atmosphere. A hospital might have a sterile and clinical atmosphere. Being able to describe the intangible feel of a place is a very B2 skill. You are moving beyond just physical objects and describing the essence of the location. I also want to touch on the grammar of there is and there are versus using active verbs. Beginners often overuse there is. There is a table, there is a chair, there is a lamp. While this is correct, it can get repetitive. Try to vary your sentence structure. Instead of saying there is a large mirror on the wall, try saying a large mirror dominates the wall. Instead of saying there are flowers on the table, try saying a vase of fresh flowers brightens up the table. Using active verbs makes your description more dynamic and engaging. Let's move into a space that we all use every day but rarely talk about in English class, and that is the bathroom. It might seem like a funny place to start, but the vocabulary here is very specific and useful. Imagine walking into a bathroom. The floor is likely tiled. Tiles are those hard, flat squares made of ceramic or stone. Are the tiles cold under your feet? Are they slippery when wet? Slippery means it is easy to slide and fall. You might stand in front of the sink. In English, we also call this the basin. Above the sink, there is usually a faucet or a tap. When you turn it on, does the water gush out, which means it comes out fast and strong, or does it trickle out, which means it comes out slowly and weakly? Look at the mirror. Is it a clear mirror or is it steamed up? When you take a hot shower, the mirror gets steamed up or foggy. You might have to wipe it with a towel to see your reflection. Speaking of towels, where are they? Are they hanging on a towel rack or are they folded neatly on a shelf? Are they fluffy and soft or are they old and scratchy? Scratchy means rough against your skin. In the shower, you might have a bottle of shampoo and a bar of soap. The soap might be sitting in a soap dish. These small prepositions like in, on, and at are crucial here. The soap is in the dish. The towel is on the rack. The mat is on the floor. Now let's move out of the house and go to a very social environment. Let's imagine a restaurant. Describing a restaurant involves more than just the food. It involves the layout and the vibe. When you walk in, is there a host or hostess waiting to seat you? Is the restaurant crowded or empty? If it is crowded, you might say the tables are packed close together. This implies that there is not much space between people. You might say it is difficult to navigate between the tables. Navigate means to find your way through. Let's look at the table setting. In a fancy restaurant, the table is set with precision. There is a tablecloth, usually white and crisp. Crisp means it is clean and stiff, not wrinkled. There is silverware or cutlery arranged in a specific order. The fork is on the left, the knife and spoon are on the right. There might be a wine glass and a water glass. In a more casual cafe, the table might be bare, meaning no tablecloth. The cutlery might be in a bucket or wrapped in a paper napkin. Describing these differences helps the listener understand the formality of the place. What about the acoustics of the restaurant? Acoustics refers to how sound travels in a room. In a restaurant with high ceilings and hard floors, the acoustics might be poor, meaning it is very loud and echoey. You have to shout to be heard. In a cozy restaurant with carpets and curtains, the sound is dampened, meaning it is quieter and easier to talk. You might hear the clinking of glasses for a toast. You might hear the low hum of background music. Is it jazz, is it pop, or is it classical? The music contributes heavily to the atmosphere. Let's shift gears to a completely different retail environment, the supermarket. The supermarket is a sensory overload. As you walk in, the automatic doors slide open with a whoosh. You are usually greeted by the produce section. The fruits and vegetables are stacked in colorful pyramids. The apples are shiny and red. The lettuce is crisp and green. You might feel the cool air blasting from the open refrigerators. Blasting means blowing strongly. You walk down the aisles. An aisle is the walkway between the shelves. The shelves are stocked with boxes, cans, and jars. Stocked means full. You might hear the beep, beep, beep of the scanners at the checkout. You might hear the squeaky wheel of a shopping cart. Squeaky means it makes a high-pitched noise. In the freezer section, the air is frigid. Frigid means extremely cold. You can see your breath. Describing a supermarket is a great way to practice vocabulary for packaging, like cartons, jars, tins, packets, and bags. Now let's focus on a place of transit like a bus stop or a train station platform. This is a great place for people watching and describing the urban landscape. You are standing under a shelter because it is drizzling. Drizzling means raining lightly. The shelter is made of glass and metal, but the glass is scratched and dirty. There is a bench, but it is damp, so you decide to stand. You look down the road scanning for the bus. To scan means to look quickly across an area to find something. You see a line of cars stopped at a red light. The brake lights are glowing red in the gray afternoon. This leads us to the traffic jam. A traffic jam is a frustration we all know. You can describe the gridlock. Gridlock means nothing is moving. You can hear the idling engines. Idling is the low sound an engine makes when the car is stopped but on. You can see the exhaust fumes rising into the air. Exhaust fumes are the gray smoke from the tailpipe. Drivers are tapping their fingers on the steering wheels in impatience. When the bus finally arrives, it pulls up to the curb with a screech of brakes. The doors hiss open. You step up onto the bus. It is crowded, so you have to squeeze past people. To squeeze past means to move through a tight space. You grab the overhead strap or the handrail to steady yourself. The bus lurches forward. To lurch means to move suddenly and unsteadily. Describing the motion of the vehicle is part of describing your surroundings, because your surroundings are moving. You look out the window and the world is a blur of motion. Houses, shops, and trees flash by. To flash by means to pass very quickly. Now let's go to a completely different setting. Let's go to a garden or a park in the spring. The vocabulary here is rich with color and life. The grass is lush and vibrant green. Lush means growing thickly and healthily. There are flower beds filled with tulips and daffodils. A flower bed is a specific area of soil where flowers are planted. The trees are beginning to bud. To bud means the small green parts are starting to open into leaves or flowers. You might see a winding path made of gravel. Gravel is small, loose stones. When you walk on gravel, it makes a crunching sound. That crunch is a very specific auditory detail. In the center of the garden, there might be a fountain. The water bubbles up and trickles down over the stones. It creates a soothing background noise. There might be a trellis or an archway covered in climbing vines. Vines are plants that grow up surfaces. You might see a bumblebee hovering over a flower. To hover means to stay in one place in the air. You might see a butterfly fluttering its wings. Fluttering describes a light, quick movement. The air smells sweet and floral, but nature is not always manicured gardens. Let's talk about the forest floor. This is a darker, earthier environment. The ground is covered in leaf litter, which is the layer of dead leaves. It feels soft and spongy under your feet. You might see moss growing on the north side of the trees. Moss is that soft green carpet-like plant. You might see fungi or mushrooms poking through the soil. You might see a rotting log covered in insects. Rotting means decaying. The smell here is very distinct. It smells of damp earth, pine needles, and decay. It is a primitive and ancient smell. The light in a forest is often filtered through the canopy, creating shafts of sunlight that look like spotlights. Let's try to describe a specific object in detail. Let's take a simple backpack. Put it in front of you mentally. It is made of durable canvas material. Durable means strong and long-lasting. It is navy blue with black zippers. It has a large main compartment and a smaller front pocket. The straps are padded for comfort. Padded means filled with soft material. There's a mesh pocket on the side for a water bottle. Mesh is a material with small holes in it. The backpack looks a bit worn out. Worn out means it has been used a lot and is getting old. There is a stain on the bottom corner, maybe from coffee or mud. Describing the condition of an object, new, old, worn, stained, pristine, helps paint a realistic picture. Now let's talk about describing the view from a high place like a balcony or a rooftop. When you look down, everything looks smaller. This is called perspective. You can see the rooftops of other buildings. Some have chimneys, some have satellite dishes, some have rooftop gardens. You can see the street layout forming a grid pattern. A grid is a network of lines that cross each other like a checkerboard. You can see the traffic moving like a stream of water. You can hear the city noise, but it sounds distant and detached. Detached means you feel separate from it. The wind is stronger up here. It might be gusty. A gust is a sudden, strong rush of wind. You might feel exposed. Exposed means you have no protection from the wind or the view. Let's go back inside and look at a bedroom. The bed is the focal point. Is it made or unmade? If it is made, the duvet is pulled up smooth and the pillows are arranged neatly. A duvet is the thick, warm cover often used instead of blankets. If it is unmade, the sheets are rumpled and the pillows are tossed aside. Rumpled means wrinkled and messy. On the bedside table, there is a lamp, a book, and a glass of water. There might be a wardrobe or a closet for clothes. A wardrobe is a piece of furniture. A closet is usually built into the wall. There might be a rug on the floor to keep your feet warm in the morning. The curtains are drawn to block out the light. Drawn in this context means closed. Let practice using relative clauses to add more detail to our descriptions. Instead of writing short, choppy sentences, we can combine them. For example, the chair is in the corner. The chair is red. The chair is comfortable. We can say the red chair, which sits in the corner, looks incredibly comfortable. Or the window, which overlooks the park, lets in a lot of light. Using words like which, who, and where allows you to pack more information into a single, smooth sentence. This is a key B2 skill. Let's try another one. The cafe is busy. The cafe is on Main Street. The cafe sells great coffee. We can say the busy cafe located on Main Street is famous for its great coffee. See how much better that flows. It sounds professional and fluent. Try to look at an object in your room and create a sentence using which. The laptop which is sitting on my desk is open. The plant which I bought yesterday needs water. Now I want to talk about describing the concept of space. Is a room spacious and airy, or is it cramped and stuffy? Stuffy means there is not enough fresh air. Is it narrow like a hallway or wide like a ballroom? Is the ceiling low, which can make you feel claustrophobic? Or is it high, which makes you feel small? Claustrophobic describes the fear of small enclosed spaces. If a room is full of furniture, you might say it is difficult to move around. If a room is empty, you might say it echoes. To echo means the sound bounces off the walls. Let's move to the kitchen, specifically the process of cooking. Cooking creates a very active environment. The onions are sizzling in the pan. Sizzling is the sound of food frying in hot oil. The water in the pot is boiling vigorously. Vigorously means with a lot of energy. The steam is rising up. The oven timer is beeping. The smell of garlic and spices fills the air. It is a sensory explosion. You might be chopping vegetables on a wooden cutting board. The rhythmic chop, chop, chop of the knife is a distinct sound. You might be stirring a sauce with a metal spoon. The metal scraping against the pot is another sound. What about a library or a study zone? The atmosphere here is completely different. It is hushed. Hushed implies a deliberate silence. People are whispering if they speak at all. You can hear the turning of pages. You can smell the scent of old paper and dust. The shelves are lined with books. To be lined with means to have rows of something along the edge. The lighting is usually focused on the tables. You might see students hunched over their textbooks. Hunched over means bending your back forward in a concentrated or tired posture. Let's briefly visit the gym because this is another common environment with unique vocabulary. The gym smells of rubber mats and sweat. It is an industrial smell. You hear the clanking of weights, metal hitting metal. You hear the whirring of the treadmills. Whirring is a low, continuous motor sound. You see people grimacing with effort. Grimacing is making a face of pain or effort. The air conditioning is usually blasting cold air to keep people cool. It is an environment of intense physical exertion. Let's move to a very specific environment that has a unique atmosphere, a hospital. Describing a hospital requires words about cleanliness and senses. When you walk in, the first thing you notice is often the smell. It smells antiseptic. Antiseptic describes that sharp chemical smell of cleaning products that kills bacteria. It might smell sterile. Sterile means completely clean and free of germs, but it can also mean lacking in personality or warmth. The lighting in a hospital is usually fluorescent. Fluorescent lights are those long tube lights that give off a very bright, sometimes harsh, white light. They can make people look a bit pale. In the hospital corridors, you might hear the squeak of rubber shoes on the linoleum floor. Linoleum is a type of smooth, shiny flooring often used in public buildings. You might see nurses rushing by in their scrubs. Scrubs are the blue or green uniforms that medical staff wear. You might hear the rhythmic beeping of machines in the rooms. There's a sense of urgency in the air. Urgency means a feeling that things need to be done quickly. But in the waiting room, the atmosphere is different. It is often filled with anxiety and boredom. People are flipping through old magazines or staring at their phones waiting for news. Describing this contrast between the busy corridors and the stagnant waiting room shows a high level of observation. Now let's travel to a completely different place. Let's go to a carnival or a fairground. This is an assault on the senses. An assault on the senses means there is so much to see, hear, and smell that it is almost overwhelming. The air is filled with the sweet, sickly smell of cotton candy and popcorn. Sickly sweet means it is so sweet it might make you feel a bit sick. You can hear a cacophony of sounds. Cacophony is a fantastic C1 word that means a loud mixture of confusing and discordant sounds. You hear the screams of people on the roller coaster, the loud music from the games, and the shouting of the ride operators. Visually, a carnival is a kaleidoscope of colors. A kaleidoscope is a toy you look into that shows changing patterns of color. So when we use it as a metaphor, it means a constantly changing, colorful scene. The lights are flashing and blinking. We often call these strobe lights if they flash very fast. The rides are spinning and whirling. To whirl means to spin around very fast. You might feel dizzy just watching them. The atmosphere here is jubilant and chaotic. Jubilant means expressing great happiness and triumph. Let's talk about describing liminal spaces. This is a fancy term for places that are transitions between one destination and another, like airports, train stations, or hotel hallways. These places often feel a bit strange because nobody lives there. Everyone is just passing through. An airport at night is a perfect example. The long corridors are empty and silent. The moving walkways or travelators hum quietly. The shops are closed with metal shutters pulled down. The rows of empty seats in the departure lounge look lonely. You might describe this atmosphere as surreal. Surreal means it feels like a dream, not quite real. In an airport, you also have the duty-free section. This is a very specific sensory experience. It usually smells strongly of mixed perfumes because people are testing different scents. The lighting is very bright and focused on the products to make them look expensive and tempting. The floors are usually highly polished marble or tile reflecting the lights. You hear the chime of the announcements over the public address system or the PA system. Passenger Smith, please report to Gate 4. That echoey voice is a staple of the airport environment. Now I want to discuss how to describe the age and history of a building. We talked about old and new, but let's get more granular. A building can be dilapidated. This means it is old and in a state of disrepair, maybe falling apart. A building can be well preserved. This means it is old and has been looked after very well. A building can be restored. This means it was old and broken, but someone fixed it up to look new again. You might see scaffolding around a building. Scaffolding is the metal framework that construction workers stand on to reach high places. If a building is covered in scaffolding, we say it is under renovation. When you enter an old house, you might smell mustiness. Musty is that smell of old paper, damp wood, and dust. You might hear the floorboards groaning or creaking under your weight. You might see dust motes dancing in the shafts of sunlight. Dust motes are those tiny little specks of dust you can only see when light shines through them. You might see cobwebs in the corners of the ceiling. Cobwebs are the old abandoned nets made by spiders. A house like this feels heavy with history. You might say it has character. Having character means it has interesting, unique features that make it special, unlike a boring modern box. Let's start with the beauty of imperfection. In textbooks, houses are always clean and new, but in real-life houses have scratches, dents, and stains. Learning to describe these flaws makes your English sound incredibly authentic. Imagine an old wooden table. It is not just brown, it is scratched. Maybe it has a water ring on it. A water ring is that circular mark left by a wet glass. We might say the wood is warped. Warped means it is bent or twisted out of shape, usually because of water or age. If a door doesn't close properly because it is warped, that is a very specific and useful detail. Think about a comfortable old sweater or a sofa. We might say it is frayed. Frayed means the threads are coming loose, usually at the edges or the seams. A rug might be threadbare. Threadbare means it is so old and worn down that you can see the floor through it. These words, frayed and threadbare, evoke a sense of history and use. They tell us that the object has been loved and used for a long time. Metal objects might be tarnished. Tarnish is when silver or copper loses its shine and turns dark, or they might be rusted if they are made of iron. A rusty gate with peeling paint is a classic image of an abandoned place. Let's talk about walls. Walls are rarely just flat color. They might have cracks running through them like spider webs. The paint might be chipping or flaking off. Chipping means small hard pieces are breaking off. Flaking means thin light pieces are coming off. There might be a damp patch in the corner. Damp means slightly wet, and it usually suggests a leak. Wallpaper might be peeling at the edges. Describing these states of disrepair helps you paint a picture of a place that needs renovation or care. Now let's move to a very advanced concept, which is describing the bones of a room. This refers to the architectural features that are part of the structure. Does the room have crown molding? Crown molding is that decorative strip of wood or plaster where the wall meets the ceiling. Does it have baseboards or skirting boards, which are the strips at the bottom of the wall? Does it have exposed beams? Beams are the heavy wooden logs that hold up the roof. If they are exposed, it means you can see them, and it usually looks very rustic and stylish. Does the room have an alcove or a nook? An alcove is a small recessed section of a room. A nook is a small cozy corner, maybe for reading. Let's practice describing a room using these architectural terms. I walked into the living room, which had high vaulted ceilings. Vaulted means arched and high. The room was dominated by a large fireplace made of rough stone. There were exposed wooden beams running across the ceiling, which gave the room a farmhouse feel. To the left of the fireplace was a small reading nook filled with cushions. The walls were painted a soft cream color, but the paint was peeling slightly near the window frame. Can you visualize that? The combination of structural details like beams and nooks with conditioned details like peeling paint creates a full reality. Now I want to guide you through a time-lapse description. A time-lapse is when you watch a whole day pass in a few seconds. Describing how a place changes from morning to night is a fantastic exercise for prepositions and light vocabulary. Let's imagine a city park. At dawn, the park is shrouded in mist. Shrouded means covered or hidden. The grass is glistening with dew. Dew is the water droplets that form in the night. The park is silent except for the early chirping of birds. The light is pale and cool, often described as blue light. As the morning progresses, the sun burns off the mist. To burn off means the heat makes the mist disappear. The park begins to fill with dog walkers and joggers. The light becomes bright and harsh. The shadows are short. The noise level rises as traffic builds up on the nearby streets. At noon, the sun is directly overhead, beating down on the grass. People are sitting on benches eating lunch. The atmosphere is bustling and active. The colors are vivid and saturated because the light is so strong. In the late afternoon, the shadows begin to lengthen. We call this the golden hour because the sunlight turns a warm honey color. The park feels lazier. People are lying on the grass reading. The frenetic energy of the day is winding down. To wind down means to slowly relax or come to an end. At dusk, the sky turns shades of purple and pink. The streetlights flicker on. The park empties out. The trees become dark silhouettes against the fading sky. A silhouette is a dark shape with the light behind it. Finally, at night, the park is dark and mysterious. The only light comes from the moon and the street lamps casting long, spooky shadows. The air cools down. The soundscape changes to the chirping of crickets. By describing the same place at 6 different times, we've used a massive amount of vocabulary related to light, sound, and atmosphere. Try this with your own bedroom. How does it change from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.? Let's talk about the word spacious and its synonyms. We know big and small, but what about cavernous? A cavernous room is huge and empty like a cave, often feeling a bit cold. What about palatial? Palatial implies it is big and luxurious, like a palace. What about vast? Vast is usually used for landscapes like a vast desert or a vast ocean, but can be used for very large halls. On the other end of the scale, we have cramped, which is negative. We have snug, which is positive. We have compact, which implies small but well organized. We have petite, which is cute and small. We have minuscule, which means tiny. Using these precise words helps the listener understand the scale. Let's integrate some phrasal verbs related to surroundings. A building might loom over you. To loom means to stand over you in a threatening or large way. Skyscrapers loom over the streets. A house might be tucked away. To be tucked away means to be hidden or in a quiet, private spot. The cottage was tucked away in the woods. A view might open up. As we climbed the hill, the view opened up before us. A room might look out onto something. My window looks out onto the garden. To spruce up means to clean or decorate. I need to spruce up my living room before the guests arrive. Now let's try a narrative exercise. I am going to tell a short story about entering a strange house. I want you to listen to how I layer the details. I stood on the porch of the old Victorian house. The wooden planks beneath my feet creaked ominously. Ominously means in a way that suggests something bad might happen. I reached for the brass door knocker, which was shaped like a lion's head. It was cold to the touch. I knocked, and the sound echoed through the house, suggesting it was empty. The door swung open with a high-pitched whine of rusty hinges. I stepped into the foyer. The air was stale and smelled faintly of lavender and dust. Dust sheets covered the furniture, making the chairs look like white ghosts. To my right, a grand staircase swept upwards into the darkness. To sweep upwards describes a smooth, curving movement. The wallpaper was peeling, revealing the gray plaster underneath. A single chandelier hung from the ceiling, but it was covered in cobwebs. Silence hung heavy in the air. In this short paragraph, I used sound, creaked, echoed, whine. Touch, cold, smell, stale, lavender, and sight, dust sheets, peeling, cobwebs. I also used the atmosphere. Ominously, silence hung heavy. This is the power of descriptive English. Let's start with the concept of motion. Usually when we describe a room, we are standing still. But what happens when the world is moving past you? Imagine you are sitting on a train or in the passenger seat of a car. The landscape is not static, it is fleeting. Fleeting means it passes quickly and does not stay. You might say the scenery whizzed by. To whiz means to move very fast with a rushing sound. You might say the trees were a blur of green. A blur is a shape that is not clear because it is moving too fast. Let's describe a journey leaving the city and entering the countryside. This is a transition description. As the train pulled out of the station, the towering skyscrapers gave way to shorter brick buildings. Gave way to is a beautiful phrase, meaning was replaced by. Gradually, the concrete jungle was replaced by industrial warehouses and factories. Then the buildings became sparse. Sparse means scattered and few, not crowded. Finally, the gray landscape transformed into rolling green hills dotted with sheep. Rolling hills describes hills that go up and down gently like waves. Dotted with means there are small spots of something scattered across the area. Now let's reverse it. You are driving into a major city at night. In the distance, I could see the glow of the city on the horizon. As we got closer, the skyline became defined. The skyline is the shape the buildings make against the sky. We entered a tunnel, and the yellow lights flashed rhythmically overhead. When we emerged, the city loomed around us, tall and bright. Loomed implies the buildings felt huge and close. The streets were gridlocked with traffic. Gridlocked means the traffic is not moving at all like a lock. The sidewalks were teeming with people. Teeming means full of moving, living things. Let's move to the topic of nostalgia and memory. Describing a place from your past is very different from describing where you are right now. You need to use phrases like, I remember, or it used to be. Let's describe a childhood home. I grew up in a drafty old farmhouse. Drafty means cold air came in through the cracks. It wasn't much to look at, but it was home. I remember the kitchen always smelled of yeast and wood smoke. There was a squeaky floorboard in the hallway that we always tried to avoid at night. Squeaky means it makes a high-pitched noise. The garden was overgrown and wild perfectly for playing hide-and-seek. There was an ancient oak tree with a tire swing hanging from a sturdy branch. Sturdy means strong and solid. When you describe a place from the past, you often focus on how it made you feel. It was a magical place to grow up. Or, it was a bit lonely because our nearest neighbor was miles away. You can also describe how the place has changed. I went back to visit my old school yesterday. It looked so much smaller than I remembered. The playground where we used to run around felt tiny. They had painted the walls a bright yellow, which looked strange to me because I remember them being gray. describing the disparity or difference between your memory and the reality is a great way to practice comparative language. Let's talk about the nuances of social spaces. A cafe is usually for coffee and light snacks, maybe working on a laptop. A diner is a specific American-style restaurant, often with booths and a long counter, serving heavy food like burgers and pancakes. A bistro is a small, usually French-style restaurant that serves simple meals and wine. A pub is a traditional British or Irish bar that feels like a community living room. A bar is more general, often louder and focused on alcohol. A club is for dancing with loud music and flashing lights. Being able to distinguish these places shows cultural fluency. Imagine a diner scene. We slid into a red vinyl booth. Vinyl is a shiny plastic material often used in diners. The table was slightly sticky. There was a jukebox in the corner playing old rock and roll songs. A jukebox is an old machine that plays music when you put money in. The waitress came over with a pot of steaming coffee. The smell of frying bacon was heavy in the air. It felt comforting and familiar. Now contrast that with a high-end bistro. We sat at a small round table covered in a crisp white cloth. There was a single candle flickering in the center. The menu was written on a chalkboard on the wall. The atmosphere was intimate and sophisticated. The waiter spoke in a hushed tone. The clinking of wine glasses was the only loud noise. The difference in vocabulary, sticky versus crisp, heavy versus intimate, helps paint the picture. I want to take a moment to discuss a very common problem. What happens when you see something and you simply do not know the English word for it? Do you stop speaking? No. You use a skill called circumlocution. This is describing the object based on what it looks like or what it does. For example, you see a stapler, but you forget the word stapler. You can say, "It is a small metal and plastic tool that we use to join papers together." If you see a chandelier, you can say, "It is a fancy light fixture with many bulbs that hangs from the ceiling." You can use phrases like, "It is shaped like," or "It is made of," or "It is used for." This is a vital survival skill in English. It keeps the conversation flowing and often helps the listener understand exactly what you mean, even without the specific noun. Don't be afraid to describe the function if the name escapes you. Let's start with the most important rule of advanced descriptive writing and speaking: show, don't tell. What does this mean? Telling is saying, "The room was messy." Showing is saying, "Clothes were strewn across the floor and stacks of old magazines toppled over on the desk." Telling is saying, "It was a hot day." Showing is saying, "Sweat trickled down my back and the asphalt shimmered in the heat." When you show, you invite the listener to experience the scene with you. You force their brain to do the work of visualizing, which makes your English much more engaging. Let's practice this. Instead of saying, "The house was old and scary," let's show it. The front gate screeched on its rusted hinges. The windows were dark and empty like hollow eyes. Weeds choked the path to the door, and the air smelled of damp earth and decay. Do you see the difference? I didn't use the word scary, but you felt it because of the sensory details. The screeching sound, the hollow windows, the choking weeds. This is the level we are aiming for today. I want to talk about pathetic fallacy. This is a literary term, but we use it in everyday speech too. It is when the surroundings match your mood. Have you ever noticed that in movies it always rains at a funeral? That is pathetic fallacy. If you are describing a sad day, you might describe the surroundings as gray, bleak and weeping. The sky was a bruise-colored purple, and the rain slid down the window like tears. If you are describing a happy day, you might say, "The sun danced on the water and the flowers nodded in the breeze." Connecting the external world to your internal world is a mark of true fluency. Let's try a narrative exercise called The Arrival. Imagine you are arriving in a new country for the first time. You step out of the airport. What hits you first? Usually, it is the air. The moment the automatic doors slid open, a wall of heat hit me, or the cold air bit at my cheeks. Then the sound. The air was filled with the honking of horns and a language I didn't understand. Then the sight. Palm trees swayed against a bright blue sky. Describing your first impressions is a powerful way to share a travel story. Now let's try the departure. You are leaving a place you love. I took one last look at the empty apartment. The walls were bare, now stripped of the photos that used to hang there. My footsteps echoed on the wooden floorboards. It smelled of cleaning spray and memories. A patch of sunlight still hit the spot where my favorite armchair used to sit. I closed the door, and the click of the lock felt final. Notice how describing the empty space emphasizes the sadness of leaving. The echo represents the emptiness. The bare walls represent the end of a chapter. Let's discuss the concept of urban nature. We often separate the city and nature, but they exist together. A dandelion pushing through a crack in the concrete. A fox darting across a busy road at night. Pigeons roosting on the ledge of a skyscraper. Moss growing on a brick wall. Describing these intersections adds a layer of realism to your city descriptions. It shows that life finds a way even in the concrete jungle. I want to revisit the idea of people watching, but integrate it into the surroundings. The people are part of the scenery. The cafe was a theater of everyday life. In the corner, a student was hunched over a laptop typing furiously. By the window, an elderly couple sat in companionable silence, sharing a pot of tea. At the counter, a barista with bright blue hair was steaming milk. The hum of their conversations provided a comforting background noise. The people are not the main subject, they are part of the atmosphere of the cafe. Let's talk about microclimates. Sometimes the weather in one spot is different from another. It was windy on the street, but in the walled garden the air was still and warm. The sun was shining, but under the dense canopy of the forest it was cool and shadowy. Describing these contrasts shows you are very observant. Now I want to give you some advanced vocabulary for light. We know bright and dark, but what about dappled? Dappled light is when sunlight comes through leaves and makes spots on the ground. We walked through the dappled sunlight of the forest. What about twilight or gloaming? These are words for the time just after sunset, when it is not quite dark yet. We sat on the porch in the gloaming watching the fireflies. What about neon? The city streets were bathed in the harsh pink glow of neon signs. As we close this massive masterclass, I want you to look at your surroundings right now with fresh eyes. Look at the device you are watching this on. Is the screen smudged with fingerprints? Is the case cracked? Look at your hand holding it. Look at the wall behind it. There is a whole world of detail right in front of you, waiting to be described. You have the tools now. You have the nouns, the adjectives, the verbs, and the prepositions. You understand light and sound and texture. You know how to zoom in and zoom out. You know how to show, not tell. You are ready to go out into the world and narrate your life. I challenge you to keep a descriptive journal. Just write 3 sentences a day. Today the sky was a piercing blue. Today the coffee tasted burnt. Today the bus smelled of wet raincoats. It takes 1 minute, but it keeps your observation skills sharp. Thank you. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your passion for learning. It has been an absolute privilege to guide you through this ultimate masterclass on describing your surroundings. I hope you feel more confident, more articulate, and more in love with the English language than when we started. This is Jessica from English in Advance signing off. Go out there, observe the world, and find the beautiful words to describe it. Have a wonderful life full of rich descriptions. Goodbye.